Welcome to A Drink of Wisdom with Jay Wise and Nathan Drinkard. I'm your host, Cody Ward. Thank you for spending some of your time with us tonight. As a reminder to all our listeners, besides being on all your favorite podcast platforms, Drink of Wisdom is also on YouTube with each show segment available. Head on over and like what you hear. We'd appreciate your subscription. What's going on, guys? Good to be back on this Friday. A lot to get into today, right?
Yep, let's go. Not much time to get to it. Let's go ahead and roll.
Let's talk some sports, baby. You know what it is. You heard the man. Let's get into it. Grab a seat because you know we got to speak. Let's roll, baby.
All right, on episode 7, the Titans are positive, the Lakers are one game away, and we look ahead to Saturday and all things college football. Let's go ahead and kick off tonight with a look back on Thursday night football. So stop me if you heard this one before. Foles beat Brady in a big game. The Chicago Bears defended Soldier Field last night, holding off Brady's Bucs 20-19. The Cairo Santos 38-yard field goal gave the Bears a 1-point lead with 1:13 on the clock. What seemed like a classic Brady drive turned into a disaster with several incomplete passes, and Brady seemingly forgetting what down it was. The Bears moved to an improbable 4-1 record, while the Bucs slipped to 3-2 on the year. So, Jay, trouble for the Bucs, and how surprised are you at the Bears?
No, it's not trouble for the Bucs. And although on the surface there's a bit of surprise by the Bears when you actually delve into who they played, it becomes a little bit more understandable. So let's start there with the Chicago Bears, who are seemingly rolling at 4-1, but then you look at things like point differential, which are a decent indicator of telling you how good a team is, and they're 4-1, but they're +5 overall. So they're probably not as good as their record indicates, and they're probably going to finish around 500, as I suspected at the start of the year. Especially when you consider they started with games against the Lions, the Giants, and the Falcons. They won all of those games by 4 points, and those teams are a newsflash, 1-11 combined. So none of those teams are very good at all. And of course, they lost the Colts in Week 4. The Colts are actually kind of good, and the Bucs are good. But as you well know, the Bucs are, and I told Drink this quick line earlier, they're not a finished product. We all know they struggled in Week 1 to some degree against New Orleans Saints, lost that game. Then they ripped off 3 in a row of their own before losing last night's game, in a game which probably should have hung on to. In the way it finished, but you look at their wins. They really don't have anything that impressive of note so far. They beat the Carolina Panthers, they beat the very depleted Denver Broncos, and then they beat the Justin Herbert Los Angeles Chargers. So nothing too impressive there. Although I still think the Bucs are going to wind up making the playoffs, and I don't see the Bears making it. And let's look ahead. I'm talking about the Bears and that soft schedule. We're gonna find out a little bit more about them down the road. They do get Carolina next week, but then they go on the road against the Rams. Then they get the Saints, Titans, Vikings, and Packers. So we'll find out a little bit more about them as the season progresses. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay's they've been pretty good so far. We all know they've got a lot of weapons to help Tom Brady, who is still playing at a reasonable level at his advanced age. I thought their running game was very good last night. Ronald Jones had a very good night. I do wonder why LaShawn McCoy and Leonard Fournette were nowhere to be found. I'd like to see those guys get a little bit of involvement. And I'm still of the mindset that Leonard Fournette is the best back on the roster. I'd like to see him get some touches at some point. I do know there's some level of understanding that Chris Godwin is not available. We know O.J. Howard is now out for the season. So they were down a few weapons last night, but the concerns for the Bucs remain what they were to start the season: their offensive line and their secondary. There were moments last night in the passing attack, particularly, where their tackles were flat out embarrassed. Talking about Donovan Smith, talking about Tristan Wirfs. And I do know, and there's some level of understanding I have when you're going against a guy like Khalil Mack, you run the risk of being embarrassed. But when Khalil Mack comes off the line and just blows Donovan Smith away, just seemingly, I don't even know what kind of pass protection that was late in the fourth quarter. When he just went inside, you get Tom Brady gets sacked, and then you see the replay and you see the expression of just disgust and like, what on earth are you doing? You call this blocking? I mean, they could slide Gronk at left tackle at this point if that's how he's going to block, because that was terrible. And then meanwhile, you got what was the other one where they said Khalil Mack give him 2 sacks because he sacked Tristan Wirfs and Tom Brady at the same time. So that was of note for the Chicago Bears. But that's going to be a concern as we move forward. You'd like to see some growth out of your rookie right tackle, Tristan Wirfs. I don't know how much better Donovan Smith is going to get, quite honestly. So that's something we got to monitor. But continued success in the ground game, that will be of great benefit to them as they progress. And then that secondary, that's still a question mark on the defense. I do like, I'm going to give some credit to one of those guys. I think Carlton Davis has had a really good season so far. He's been making a lot of plays, had a nice interception last night against Allen Robinson. But still, by and large, they're a question mark. Also, this could be a huge loss in production and weight. Vita Vea is out for the year with that ankle injury. He had a sack last night. So he's a productive guy in that front seven. So we'll see how that affects them moving forward. But I'm not concerned. I'm not all that concerned with Tampa Bay. I think when you look at it, it's still relatively early. Tom Brady's still trying to get acclimated to these guys. Again, he didn't have Godwin last night. But that despite not having Godwin, I mean, you get a guy to come in there and a Tyler Johnson who seemingly had a relatively decent night. So you'd like to see that. Maybe Gronk gets more involved as we move along. Cameron Brate did some good things last night. But then over to the Bears. Not only has the schedule been soft, but you look at how dominant Green Bay has been so far. And I still have a notion that Minnesota is going to make some noise down the line. There's no way they're as bad as they've started. So when you look at those two things, the Chicago Bears offense is simply it isn't all that impressive. They didn't run the ball at all last night. David Montgomery did next to nothing. So if they're going to be one-dimensional and it's just going to be Nick Foles, or dare I say, maybe we see Mitchell Trubisky come back at some point into the fray, they're just not going to have enough to get it done. I love Allen Robinson. I think he's a great wide receiver in this league. But outside of him, you don't really have a lot. I know Jimmy Graham made a highlight reel play last night, but by and large, he's inconsistent. He's a shell of his former self. Anthony Miller's okay, and they got a few other guys in there, but nothing outstanding. And as far as their defense, Khalil Mack, he kind of, a little blast from the past last night, reminiscent of how that defense performed in 2018. Both of his sacks in the second half were key because they thwarted Tampa Bay drives, had them settling for field goals. So that was good to see, but they're still not as good as they were 2 years ago. And that defensive dominance, replicating it from year to year, is pretty difficult. You think about some of the defenses we've seen in the not so distant past, the 2015 Broncos, the 2017 Jaguars, and the 2018 Bears. None of those defenses were as dominant or as good the following year. So with those things in mind, I'm not all that concerned about Tampa Bay, even though they're 3-2. They're still better than these 4-1 Chicago Bears, who will make no mistake, they will fall back to the pack quickly.
Not concerned about what the Bucs did last night. It happens. It's Thursday night game. We know Tom Brady. We know his pedigree. He's not too concerned with the month of October, September, October. It's not his thing. He usually get things buttoned up by November and December. That's what we usually see out of him. We'll see if that's the case with his new team. But I will say this: the Bears. I don't think the Bears. I don't think we give them enough credit. I think that Bears team we seen last night can beat the Vikings. They can't beat Green Bay, but they can beat the Vikings. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think they're as much as a let's say fluke as we think they be. Mainly because I think if you can get Nick Foles to actually come to the party, like I felt like he flopped around for like 3 quarters, whatever. And Jay Wright, if you take the Jimmy Graham, miraculous one-hand catch out of that, the offense wasn't nothing to really sneeze at. But I would like to say that, it happens. Primetime TV. Nick Foles came in as a backup last week. This was his first start. So he's getting acclimated to Allen Robinson and the other weapons he got on the team, Jimmy Graham and all those guys. So I do think at some point they can get a little better, and we might see a little better. So to answer the question, I'm not really concerned about the Bucs, and I do think the Bears could, make a little noise, at least interrupt somebody's playoff run. You know what I'm saying? Keep them out. So uphill battle, yes. But some of the quick notes I took from the game, I thought the Bucs defense looked pretty good for the most part. I thought Tom Brady had enough defense to get it done last night. Because a lot of people like to say, hey, well, tell you what, Tom Brady can't play both sides of the ball. Well, hell, he didn't have to play both sides of the ball last night to get it done last night. It just didn't get done. So take that for what it's worth. I would like to have been a coach in the headset when Tom Brady is over here lost in the sauce in the fourth quarter, and he's over here trying to argue what's going on. I would like to be that coach to say, all right, Tom, get off the field. What are you doing? No. It's fourth. No. That was just fourth down. Get on off the field, buddy. Do you need somebody to come out there and grab you or what? Like, what are we doing here? You make yourself look bad. You got the Chicago Bears. They over there celebrating. Everybody can't be wrong if they over there throwing a celebration. You still the only one standing here in the middle of the field looking crazy. Come on, just come on off the field. My number 3 note, Nick Foles, he's just not that dude at quarterback. And this is my problem I have with the Bears. Because in order for the Bears to be good, they need him to be good. But last night, hopefully, I don't know, maybe he had knocked some rust off. I don't know what you want to call it. But you bench Trubisky because, I don't know, he made one bad play or he made a significant bad play, and you benched him for Nick Foles, and I'm looking at Nick Foles like, you got to point out the upgrade for me. What was the upgrade? I don't know. So maybe I missed something with that. Khalil Mack wreaking havoc on the Bucs offensive line in general. It really did not matter who they lined him up with last night. He was smoking them. That's just what it is. It's levels to this, and Khalil Mack reached into the old, I just signed with the Chicago Bears bag last night, and we seen him. He was giving them fits. Old Tristan Wirth, welcome to the NFL, buddy, because you got a nice acclamation last night, and you got treated like a welcome mat. So welcome on in, fix yourself a drink. You know what it is. The Bucs last night. The Bucs had 11 penalties for over 100 yards. That ain't going to cut it. They're just not going to cut it. That's why you probably seen Tom Brady, having a fit. If anything, Tom Brady is more used to a disciplined style of football, and that wasn't it last night. That just wasn't it. It was a bunch of crazy penalties. Tom Brady throwing a fit. It is what it is, but you got to clean that up. Bruce Arians, you out here worried about golfing and looking cool on the sideline. Let's worry a little more about discipline. Let's worry about the regulations and the rules of playing football instead of looking cool with your Kango. Look, the Bears had a hard time running the ball last night. We seen that. They had a very hard time running against that front. What we know about the Bucs was like a number 1 or 2 team last year in rushing defense. Their front seven was always respectable when it came to the rush. So that shouldn't be as much as an anomaly. But Bears, you got to get together. If you're going to do something, you got to be able to run the ball. You're going to play other teams that's going to be able to stop the run. So you're going to have to figure out something that's on the OC. And then that was pretty much – and my last note was, hey, Wirth, you really going to be this big and let a man hip toss you like that on Thursday Night Football? What are we doing here? What are they teaching you at practice? You can't let a man just whip you around like that. So, hey, Wirth, you got to get that together, bro. Hit the gym, do something. You know what I'm saying? Work on that balance, do something. But that ain't it, bro. Look, we ain't out here trying to get our green belt in the mouth. That ain't it. So you got to get it together. You got to get it together, bro. So, those are my big takeaways, and that's how I feel about both team situation as of now.
Yeah, I just want to answer a couple of those. If you're telling me and you believe that Minnesota is as bad as they've played to start, then yes, I agree with you. The Bears can absolutely – they can beat them. Because I'm just of the mindset that we haven't seen the best of Minnesota yet.
What have you seen out of Minnesota that tell me that I'm out of my mind here?
No, I'm not. Well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm absolutely not saying that. But they did it.
You brought it back up as if you was questioning what I said. So I'm saying, what have you seen out of the Vikings?
Well, they won last week, and they've still been able to run the ball quite effectively. And that's one thing. Chicago was not good in rush defense last night. I mean, you let Ronald Jones go for over 100 yards. Then, I mean, what makes you believe you can handle Dalvin Cook? Because he's still playing at a very high level. And the other quick point is, I'm unsure about, the whole Trubisky Foles thing. I'm not so sure it's what they see in Nick Foles is what they don't see in Mitchell Trubisky. I think it's more an indictment of Mitchell Trubisky more than, Nick Foles is great, because he hasn't been great ever at all outside of a Philly uniform.
Now back to your question. Yes, Ronald Jones did, but I think it was more of a respect factor for what Tom Brady can do with the ball than a respect factor than what Kirk Cousins can do with the ball. I do think it could be different results for the game. I mean, that's why they play the games, for us to figure it out. But like I said, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, the Bears, we have teams like this every year, right? These teams that play defense, they got a nice game manager quarterback, and they just make enough plays. Those teams are a little dangerous because if you get, in kind of a dogfight with them, that's what this game felt like last night. It felt like an old backyard brawl, dog fight, whatever euphemism you want to use. But when you kind of play down to that level, a team like this can beat a lot of teams every week. Especially if you're doing what the Bears were doing. You were getting the Bucs behind the sticks. You were forcing Tom Brady into obvious passing situations. And on the Bears side of the things, you were playing good defense. You were taking care of the ball. I mean, that's like 80% of your winning ingredients in your NFL win the game pie, before you add anything else into it. If you're not the team making mistakes, and you're not the team playing from behind the sticks, and you're not the team kicking field goals every time you get to the red zone, you got a good chance to win, right? So to me, that this game is really that the Bears executed on the level that you would expect of a team like the Bears that have been together. The nucleus of this team, the coach of this team, they've been together for a while now. This isn't their first rodeo, where the Bucs are a team that you've thrown all this crap into a pile and you're trying to let it sort itself out. So I would expect games like this from the Bucs. They kind of, have things that just don't quite click, where the Bears, you should be clicking by now. Now they're not clicking as they should because obviously the quarterback situation. But I think Nick Foles played well enough to deserve some more shots at this. If you remember, he hurt himself in Jacksonville, and then when he came back, he got thrown into a brutal 3-game stretch. And I don't even know if he was really ready. It was a collarbone injury, and he came back pretty fast. So we don't even know how injured he was. Is he the long-term answer? Well, no, he's not. But if their defense plays this well and they can run the ball a little bit better, can they continue winning games with Nick Foles? I think they can. Obviously, I'm not going to pick them to win the Super Bowl, but teams like this can always carve out 9-10 win seasons. If they come and show up every week and they do what they're supposed to do. And then for the Bucs, like I said, man, 100 yards and penalties, come on, you can't be doing that. We know the Tom Brady blueprint is not get sacked. You're letting them get sacked like crazy. Your tackles aren't playing well. We knew the offensive line was questionable to begin with. You can't be having that happen. You can't go 4-14 on third down. You can't kick 4 field goals. This team, that's to me is the most unexcusable, is the 4 field goals. You can't, you're Tom Brady with every offensive weapon from here to the other end of the country. You come on, we got to make some things happen here. And that, to me, kick field goals instead of touchdowns, might lose the game. Just how it is.